Hail, good yeoman! 'Tis I, the Shovel Knight. Please pay no attention to the hand supporting me from beneath. I have just returned from my adventure in the Pocket Dungeon. It was quite exciting, if I do say so myself.
I agree, Sir Shovel. I really enjoyed my time with Pocket Dungeon too. 2014's Shovel Knight is one of my favorite throwback games ever, and I was really impressed with how developer Yacht Club managed to shrink that platformer down into a roguelite-puzzle game. Impressed and curious. How did Yacht Club convert all the good stuff about Shovel Knight into a totally different genre? Gather around the campfire. It's story time. Before we can talk about specific gameplay translations, it's important to know where Pocket Dungeon originated. And the answer might surprise you. Twitter. I'll let Yacht Club marketing manager Celia Schilling speak for the team on that discovery. All credit to the Switchaboo podcast for the next two quotes.
My colleagues, as per usual, were lurking Twitter, and they spotted this really cool game called Puzzle Knights. And they're like, whoa, this is a puzzle crossover with a roguelike adventure. This is interesting because we love both of those genres. So we reached out to Vine, which is this guy named Russell, and he was more than ecstatic, being like, yeah, let's work together on this.
It's the same way Yacht Club stumbled across Cyber Shadow, another throwback game I've previously covered here on the channel.
At this point, the only throwbacks I get are from digging too hard. Bit of medieval humor for you there.
When you put Vine's Puzzle Knights next to Pocket Dungeon, the similarities are very clear, though this was obviously so much more than a reskin. Fortunately, Yacht Club had already experimented with Shovel Knight quite a bit. There are extra chapters where you play as other knights, a Smash Bros. Influenced Showdown multiplayer mode, and a full-on card game called Joustus from King Knight's campaign.
Yeah, it was an interesting process trying to figure out how exactly to translate the characters into a puzzle game. Through the Shovel Knight series, you get to know the characters and their personality. So it's like, how do we take that and put it in a brand new world?
Let's step inside the puzzle cube and enter that brand new world ourselves. Gameplay couldn't be more different between Shovel Knight and Pocket Dungeon. In Shovel Knight, you're free to run, jump, and slash at enemies across a series of challenging platform stages. In Pocket Dungeon, you're bound to a grid, moving in 4 cardinal directions, bumping into enemies to exchange blows. I find it really fascinating how some of those enemies are essentially one-to-one translations between games. The Beetle is the most basic enemy, the Goomba of Shovel Knight, if you will. The little bug will only harm you if it makes direct contact. It has no offensive maneuver. The developers basically copied and pasted these tactics for Pocket Dungeon. Beetos don't directly attack you as they file onto the screen. Instead, they'll only damage you when you bump into them with your own attack, the same way every enemy in the game counters you. The Tadvolt was ported in a similar manner. The frog enemy alternates between its neutral and electrified states every few turns, the same way it tries to shock you intermittently in the original game. Rat Sploders are just about the same too. Attack them in either game, and they explode, clearing rocks and other enemies from the screen. Heck, even the rocks themselves are basically one-to-one between the two games, as obstacles you need to break apart with your shovel to clear a path.
Do you know, I find most of those rocks to be a royal pain. They chip my shovel.
But not every enemy could be so easily translated between games. Some have serious changes, like the fairy. In Shovel Knight, it homes in on you. In Pocket Dungeon, it deals increased damage when you're at low health. Different mechanics, but still similar in spirit. Both versions of the fairy cause extra trouble when you're preoccupied with other things. The Invisishades had to be retooled for Pocket Dungeon too, phasing out of existence after being attacked until you hit something else. This is arguably easier than the way they're defeated in Shovel Knight, as you smack around an orb that casts light spells in 4 directions. Conversely, I find Wisms to be much trickier in Pocket Dungeon, as they teleport away before you can finish them off. Compare that to Shovel Knight, where they simply cast magic orbs while standing in one spot. Both of these enemies had to be changed quite a bit to work in Pocket Dungeon. Wism even got a whole new variant called Glitzum, But all you really need to know about him for this video is that he lets you play a bonus game where you choose a card. There's already almost too much to discuss, as Schilling can attest.
I think the biggest problem was being like, when are we going to cut off adding all the cool stuff? Like, we gotta ship this game eventually, right, guys?
Some enemies didn't make the cut, like the Blitzsteed seen here. Others received improved roles in Pocket Dungeon. Spinwolves are fine enemies on their own in Shovel Knight, but they can actually gang up in packs in Pocket Dungeon, the way real-life wolves would. Similarly, the jellyfish-like floatsomes appear in the flying machine in the original game, and while they do appear in the same level in Pocket Dungeon, they're first introduced in the Iron Whale. It makes so much more sense for them to appear in a water level first. Still others received much larger roles in Pocket Dungeon, with the biggest example being the Super Skeleton. This leaping, lantern-carrying mini-boss was turned into a full-on NPC called the Shrine Master. It went from being another pile of bones you have to knock down to one of the most intriguing and mysterious characters. I won't say anything more in an effort to keep this video spoiler-free.
Shrine Master and I still hang out all the time. He has a superb collection of Criterion Blu-rays, believe it or not.
Many of Shovel Knight's existing NPCs also made the jump to Pocket Dungeon. Like enemies, they often play the same role, with a few adjustments when necessary. Move left from your home base in either title, and you'll find Mona and her minigame. In Shovel Knight, she challenges you to knock potions into targets for points, almost like Breakout. In Pocket Dungeon, it's a snappier minigame where you must quickly stab targets around you. Both games require quick reflexes, timing, and judgment. One of the strongest instances of Yacht Club preserving the spirit of a character across both games. The same goes for Percy. The scholarly horse first appeared as a catapult operator in Shovel Knight, and his contraptions could fling our good sir across the overworld map more quickly.
I still have dents in my armor I can't buff out.
In Pocket Dungeon, he's upgraded to a cannon. It's more powerful, but it serves the same purpose, blasting our hero to a point further along the trail. And in Pocket Dungeon's case, it saves you a lot of headache by skipping earlier levels as you do more and more runs. The Truffle King is also a big help during Pocket Dungeon runs, if you can find him. His Ichor restores and boosts your health, which can totally save a run that's going south. In the original game, you can visit him anytime you like, and he has more choices for filling your chalice, free of charge. He's generally more free-spirited in that game. Moving on to things you pay for, there are all the lovely relics sold by Chester. His role is the same across both games, though he's upgraded from bursting out of treasure chests in Shovel Knight to running a proper shop in Pocket Dungeon. Just like the Truffle King's magic juice, Chester's relics can totally save your butt during a run. I'm particularly fond of the meal ticket, which raises your max HP for the current run. That's one of the simplest translations between games. It's a permanent upgrade in the original game, but a temporary buff for each run in Pocket Dungeon. Another relic, the Warhorn, is basically one-to-one between games. You blow it in Shovel Knight to clear enemies in the area around you, you blow it in Pocket Dungeon to deal damage in the same radius. Conversely, some relics totally transformed between the two games. Shovel Knight's Flare Wand shoots a fiery orb across the screen, but in Pocket Dungeon, it's been exchanged for the Fizzle Wand, which leaves a trail of flames behind you as you move. It was a change Yacht Club made, necessitated by the different gameplay styles. Leaving a burning trail behind you is simply more tactical in a grid-based game. In fact, fire and its fellow elements play very different roles in Pocket Dungeon. The Flame Axe deals burning damage, the Ice Axe freezes enemies in place, the Zap Wand sends a bolt of lightning through your enemies, while the Smoke Bomb keeps you safe from harm inside its obscuring cloud. Credit goes to the original developer Vine for a lot of those pickups, as many of them were carried over from Puzzle Knights. Celia Schilling explains that in another interview, this time with Guidefall.
Some of the items that you see in Pocket Dungeon are kept from the original game, like for example the wooden sword.
All of these items may have been overpowered for the original Shovel Knight, even the simple wooden sword and its increased damage, but they fit perfectly in the run-based gameplay of Pocket Dungeon. And because they only last for a limited number of hits, you're never truly overpowered. Yacht Club took care to carry over its permanent relics from Shovel Knight to make temporary buffs in Pocket Dungeon. Of course, no matter which game you're playing, they totally come in clutch.
That treasure knight is a greedy one. Excellent backstroke, though.
Sounds like the perfect time to talk about the rest of the knights then. To me, this is one of the most exciting aspects of designing a game in a different genre. How do you take such bespoke boss fights and translate them into a puzzle game? According to Schilling in her earlier interview with Switchaboo, the team pondered this exact question.
It's like, what is the most fun? So when designing that, it's like, oh, should we have the characters, be more powerful, or how do we balance them? So the focus was more on fun and gameplay style.
If you ask me, and I guess you kind of are by watching this video, Yacht Club totally nailed that balance. Battles with your rival knights in Pocket Dungeon have the same vibes and challenge as the original duels in Shovel Knight. Polar Knight sends snowballs rolling toward you as spikes begin to protrude from the ground. Tinker Knight begins the battle flailing around with his tools before jumping into his massive mech for the second phase. Both Plague Knight battles begin with the room filled with rocks. The perspective may be changed, and the fights may require different tactics, but the spirit is the same. Sticking with Plague Knight for a moment, he's one of only 3 characters that aren't Shovel Knight to get his own standalone adventure. We get to take control of the explosive eccentric in Plague of Shadows, and his moveset is totally different from Shovel Knight's. His jump is shorter, he can charge up and burst forward with energy, and his various bombs deal damage from a distance. He also has less health, something that directly carries over into Pocket Dungeon. Couple that with a more stick-and-move playstyle thanks to his poison attacks, and an abundance of bombs and rat sploders that appear while playing as him, and you've got a strong translation of his playstyle from one game to another. King Knight and Specter Knight are the other 2 characters who got their own stories, and their special tricks also got condensed down to Pocket Dungeon in fun ways. The focus on fun that Schilling mentioned is clear. King Knight's trademark attack is a slam. He uses it during his Shovel Knight boss fight, and we get to make use of it ourselves while platforming through King of Cards. It translates perfectly to the grid of Pocket Dungeon, sending him hurtling forward a handful of spaces. Likewise, Specter Knight carries his signature scythe, which gets used like a grappling hook in Specter of Torment. His flashiest attack in the original boss fight sends his scythe flying around the battlefield like a bladed boomerang. Again, this is a perfect translation into Pocket Dungeon, as the scythe flies around in a spinning 2x2 pattern that you need to sidestep. Furthermore, Specter of Torment doesn't give him a health bar. Instead, his life force is called Will, and this is directly reflected in Pocket Dungeon. Specter Knight is actually damaged by healing potions. You instead replenish your HP by slaying enemies. I think that's one of the most clever implementations of a character-specific trait in all of Pocket Dungeon. Each knight has their own perks like this. While we did get a taste of how many of them play in Shovel Knight Showdown, it's here in Pocket Dungeon that we can truly strap on the armor of each knight and go through a complete adventure. We get to actually control Tinker Knight's mech ourselves. We get to burrow through the earth as Mole Knight. Much like how some enemies and NPCs were actually improved in Pocket Dungeon, many of the ancillary knights finally get their moment in the spotlight. On top of that, we get brand new ones like Prism Knight and Scrap Knight, who are wonderful additions to the roster.
Oh, those ladies are quite fun. They bring the best snacks to Shrine Master's movie night.
In one sense, this new spin on Shovel Knight doesn't change a thing. You're still strategically positioning yourself around enemies, using magic items, meeting friendly faces, and fighting formidable knights. The team managed to capture and condense the magic of the original platformer into the puzzle cube that is Pocket Dungeon. But in, well, every other sense, the original game is totally transformed here. Successfully so. The team managed to reinterpret the key features of Shovel Knight, giving new or expanded roles to its friendly NPCs and foes alike. Yacht Club, together with Vine, adapted Puzzle Knights into something totally fresh and fun for Shovel Knight. And that's how the whole shrinking story goes.
Forsooth, Tony has asked me to thank you most kindly for watching this video. If you wish to subscribe, you can do so with the button in the middle, and it would help him out an awful lot. And if you wish to watch the things he's already, quote, cooked up, you can hit that link on the far left. Thank you ever so much for watching, and he will see you next time.